So it's Board Gaming Friday, and we've got some incoming mailbag here. Question: solo board gaming, definitely an aspect of the hobby. And from that perspective, what would be the best or an excellent or top recommendations for a miniature-based solo board game? Now, certainly many board games have a miniature-based component. It might be a map with miniatures for the main characters and interaction. There's even card-based games that use miniatures for markers and tokens. But when someone says to me, in my mind, miniature-based board game, we're talking about something that is the primary component. That is the component where there are lots and lots of miniatures and the main way of interacting with the game, with the gaming environment. If we lay everything out, it's like 80% miniatures. Of course, there's a board component, and it might be a fold out or it might be tiles. And then, of course, there's going to be some supporting tokens, dice, and cards. But that focus is miniature-based. And from that solo perspective, I tend to enjoy miniature-heavy games. Not only as a wargamer do I really appreciate the miniatures, but in terms of solo play where you are on your own time, you are making those decisions and you're kind of analyzing and seeing the different flow. There's a very real analog connection. So I really enjoy heavy miniature-based games playing solo because when you step back for a moment and look at the board, it really pulls you into that narrative and really pulls you into that world. So my recommendation would be to explore the Zombicide Modern, Zombicide Black Plague, Zombicide Invader, Sci-Fi. These are fully miniature-based. Now, in exploring the rules and selecting whether you want to go modern, fantasy, or sci-fi, these are dice games. They are games that are pretty light on the rules in that you run around beating up zombies, you collect gear, you accomplish missions, things spawn randomly. It's a deck of cards that have spawn points, so sometimes nothing spawns, sometimes everything spawns, sometimes it's all over the place. That randomness is very much part of the game. The rules I find are light enough that they work. They are what they are. They drive the narrative. They drive the experience. And it's really easy and fun to play and set up. And especially if you're playing solo, once it's set up, you can play multiple games. But that would be my recommendation to really look at and to really explore, because before you even jump into any of the expansions, the Zombicide expansions for each of the series, there's a lot of miniatures. There's a lot of content, and these zombies are constantly spawning, and you're moving around on the board, and visually, it really pulls you in. When you first start with the game, you're like, look at all these zombies. Are we going to utilize them all, or are they just kind of placeholders? It's like, no, by like turn 5, 6, and 7, they are all going to be on the table. Now, in terms of selection, I don't have Zombicide Modern. A good friend of mine, excellent, fantastic painter. He has both series. He's got everything painted. So when I feel like playing that or we want to explore that, I jump in on his collection. And I should say from the paint perspective too, this is also kind of a sidebar pulling you into the narrative. If you enjoy painting your miniatures, if you enjoy that aspect, and certainly the level of the games don't require it. They're absolutely fantastic visually. They don't need to be painted. But if that is a direction that you go in or you're able to explore, it just pulls the narrative. It raises the narrative even more. My recommendation, I'm going to split my recommendation here. And by recommendation, certainly 2 to set out. What I enjoy about Black Plague, it combines kind of this chase and race type game. It combines this idea of exploration and leveling up and getting gear. I love the fact that it's might and magic. I love the fact that I can play kind of a warrior class against various zombies and abominations and spawns. But I also like the ability that you can utilize magic in the game. And the magic is very kind of destructive, free-flowing combat. I like that perspective. I like pulling it in, that survival aspect. But I also really enjoy, and for a long time Black Plague was, and it still is a game that I regularly play, But out of the titles, I tend to enjoy Zombicide Invader the most. This is sci-fi based. It's set in the future on a planet. You're on this research base. Zombies or Xenos are spawning everywhere. They're all jacked up. They're running around, going crazy, and you need to escape. And there is a campaign. You can play the missions solo, but there is a campaign as you go. And what I find interesting is titles in my collection, I don't really have a lot of sci-fi games. I mean, I have enough, but most of my titles tend to be fantasy or dungeon crawler and some Euros and aspects of that kind of resource management. But Zombicide Invader has that duality of it's a fun game, it's a great solo game, it plays fast, there's a lot of miniatures, miniature heavy based, but at the same time, it's not like I've got like 3 or 4 other sci-fi based games. I mean, I love dungeon crawlers. I've got a lot of dungeon crawlers. So it has that duality of something very, very unique for solo play, but also in terms of the collection that I have, very, very unique. And I pushed up to my channel here under the board gaming playlist. No spoilers, but some tactics, some flow, some ideas for both Black Plague and Invader.